I would like to thank you for this invitation. I was a little bit surprised with this invitation because it's not at all my area. I don't speak often about these kind of issues. So I don't know if you would like, if you will like what I will talk about, because I will keep a little bit on this issue of new economic models to overcome the crisis, because almost every time when I am invited to talk, I talk about or speak about politics, economics, government, and European affairs, and that's all. I'm not very interesting. This is my main issues. And when I think, I was thinking a little bit about this yesterday night, I realized that 90% about my lectures or conferences or lessons are about the same issue. Will be a little bit different. First thing, I'm a journalist since 1989, so 24 years. I started working at Newspaper Express when I was 21 years old, and 3 years after, at 24, I moved to SIC Television. I was one of the journalists that launched the first private television in Portugal in 1992. I stayed there for 17 years as political reporter, political editor, then deputy news director, and then editor-in-chief of the first 24 hours news channel in Portugal, which is called SIC News. Then I moved back to Expresso, where I am since 2009. I'm the editor-in-chief for 2 years, which is and the newspaper business nowadays is a really, really tough business all around the world, except from China and India. But on all Western world, it's really, really hard to work on newspaper business, but it's very interesting and a very challenging thing. The first thing, I don't know if I am the right guy to talk to you, because the two worlds that I know better, which are journalism and politics, are male worlds. Mostly when you look at the top senior management. When I leave this program this morning, I will go to a meeting on the board, and we'll have mainly men around the table. I was counting on my Outlook. There are 3 women on that meeting, but there are 8 men to 3 women on the meeting I will have at 10:30 p.m. Then when I look at politics, and my weekly work schedule is all about politics and television and the newspaper, I mainly talk to men. And even when you look at the government or the main opposition parties, of course you have lots of fantastic women, but when you look at the top decision makers, there are mainly men. Portugal is not a good example at all on that issues. And the journalism is one of the strangest things, and I'm one of the guilty guys, and you can look at me like that, because on my direction editors team on Expresso, we are 6 men. We have lots of women working with us. I don't know, maybe the majority of the newsroom is already a woman majority. It will be definitely a woman majority in a few years, because there are much more women coming out from the universities, and that's very good, not only in journalism, but mainly on all areas in Portugal, and that's very, very interesting. It's a kind of a soft revolution that started 20 or 30 years ago, and it's growing, and that's very good. But when you look at a newspaper like Expresso, and Expresso was launched 40 years ago, 1 year before the revolution, our revolution, because we lived in on a dictatorship at that time. We had censorship. Our main idea was freedom, okay? Freedom of the press, freedom of thinking, and then freedom on a general basis. And it's not very good when you look at the newspaper that is our anniversary, our 40th anniversary was this year, that, okay, we have fulfilled our main goals, our external goals. We live on a free society with free politics, with freedom of the press, with free thinking. But when you look on our home, we still have We have lots of women on management positions, but not on the top, on the second rank, and that's not very good. I think it will change on a few years, and I hope that will happen. I will speak about this, how these new economic models to overcome the crisis. I won't speak about science, coaching, management, or marketing. You have lots of experts around here. I don't know anything about it. I will talk about two different things. The first is you cannot look at a country like Portugal without looking at the crisis and without realizing or assuming that this is a structural crisis that will change our society forever. Sometimes when I'll talk with lots of people, and I was talking with some friends around here, lots of people say, oh, in my business things are getting better. We're getting on the track again and it's good. That's not true, okay? It's true for your business. It's maybe true for the bubble where you live. And your bubble is not on any negative sense, but we all, as individuals, live in small bubbles. Our individual bubble, our family bubble, our friends' bubble, our company bubble, our sector bubble. But that's that. After that, there's a society. And on our society, and you can say that definitely about Portugal, definitely about Greece, a little bit definitely about Ireland, and definitely about all the southern countries of Europe, and some of Central Europe, because when you look at the austerity-driven politics, they are widespreading, okay? But when you look at countries like Portugal, you need to assume, you don't need to cry or to say, oh, or to be completely negative, but you need to be realistic. You need to assume that everybody, almost everybody that works on public sector, almost everybody that they are on unemployment. Almost everybody that lives from pensions, and we're talking about 4 or 5 million people on a country with 10 million people, almost 4 million people will change their lives forever. And so when you look at that, you definitely realize that you live in the bubble. That's not bad. That's where we live. Thank God I work on a good company that is listed on the stock exchange. We can deliver every 3 months good results, and we need to survive. And okay, we're struggling with our competitors every day. That's your life, okay. But you need to realize that the society you live, it's not that. Your bubble is one of the bubbles of a society where lots of changes have come for good. But at the same time, this crisis showed us 2 or 3 trends that are very interesting. And they are very interesting even when you think about leadership, or about your life, or about anything you need to do on the future. The first thing, when you look at the biggest consumer trends and the most serious consumer trends that have been made in Portugal the last 3 years, the first trend in 2011, 3 years ago, and there's a big difference from Portugal, mainly from the United States and the United Kingdom, is that our crisis really started in 2011 and not during the Lehman Brothers crisis. It's completely different. Our crisis is not a financial crisis driven, okay? It was not a crisis on the banking system. Of course, we have problems. We had big problems some big problems on the financial sector, and we still have some, but there are not huge there was not a huge financial crisis or banking crisis in Portugal at all. It was a very small one. If you look at all the money that the Troika lends us to the banking system, it's not even 10% of the money. It's around 10%. So our crisis hit us at 2011 when we were rescued, and that's the really word. And when you are rescued, okay, you are at the same time you were saved, but at the next step you are depending on the people who saved you, and that's what's happening to us, and that's what will happen to us on the next years or decades, not on on a very, you cannot say that we'll be always on a rescue or a bailout program, not at all. We'll be back on the markets, I think, next year. But we will be back on the markets with lots of help, okay? We are going to swim in the pool, but with lots of people around the pool looking at us to save us if anything happens to us. And that will be our life. And what has changed mainly in our lives? First trend in 2011, people return to their households. The first trend is what it was: rediscover where you live, your home, dinner with friends at home, dinner with friends at their homes. Explore everything you have on your cable TV, on your Wi-Fi system, on your bookshelves. You have probably 100, 200 books you have never read, and you're always buying books, new books, and you have lots of shelves with books you have never read, and you are always buying. So I will read these on next holidays or when I retire. Lend some books and ask some books for lending. Don't buy too much music. You have all your Wi-Fi, your Spotify things, everything, your cable TV with 200 channels. And that was the first thing that happened in 2011, mainly. This changed a lot of consumer trends. People explore their households, they really explore their households. But this didn't stop there. In 2012, there was a different trend. People went out to explore the public space. We live in a fantastic country for exploring the public space much better than all around Europe. You have sunshine, probably 70% of the days during all year. Even now, even today, which is a little cold for our standards, it's good to be outside. And people went to the gardens, to the public space, to explore the free programs that there are, some cultural free programs, some social free programs. In 2012, lots of families, individuals, and even companies, they started to explore the outside world. And what had happened this year, 2013? People kept exploring the public space, but now on the basis of relations and network on the public space. If you look at the main small businesses that are flourishing around us, there are small businesses, most of them run by young people, that they bet a lot on small communities, people coming to their cafes or their kiosks or their spots or their small restaurants, mainly low-cost restaurants, where people stay around, they have Wi-Fi, everybody, people stay, people connect, and it's a completely different network on the outside. And this is new, and this is very good for our society. And when I speak about this is because even though I think and I started with a very pessimist or realist sentence or idea, I think we need to be very optimist on this new side of the question. Is that every time when you have structural changes on a society, you have bad things and you have good things. And for a long time, bad things go side by side with good things. So, as I said before, we don't need only to look on the bad things, but we don't need only to look at the good things. We need to keep attention on both them. And on the good side of this coin is these completely new economic models to overcome the crisis, that they are widespreading and increasing, and you can see all around the country, and I think we can see all around Europe and other countries that were hit by this kind of structural crisis. And it's how some innovation and creativity is coming around us and spreading around us, even when we don't notice it. And this is very, very interesting. Because lots of business that we look now, and they are flourishing, a few years ago, they have probably they won't have the idea to run them, and probably the bank won't lend them the money at that time. And now the banks, they are not lending money to make some buildings, and that's good. And they are starting to look at this kind of small businesses, small ideas, small companies, mostly driven by young people, but with people from different ages. And this is very, very, very interesting. You should look at soap opera. I think probably nobody here looks at the soap opera at night, which is a mistake. It's a good taste, but a mistake. Because we always, when I give a lesson in a university, and sometimes it happens, the first thing I say is that when you look at consumer trends and media trends, you should never believe that your habits are the habits of other people. And when I ask to people with 21, 22, 23 years old, I say, how many times do you look at free-to-air television, what you call in Portugal televisão generalista, free-to-air television at 8 p.m., the main news at 8 p.m. And when you look at a classroom with 25 or 30 or 40 or 50, sometimes you have one arm up, 1 or 0. And because they say, nobody sees television at 8 p.m. Wrong. Every day, more than 3 million people in Portugal still watch television at 8 p.m. And I say, okay, how many of you watch 2 soap opera? Nobody. Sometimes there are 1 or 2 that follow one soap opera. Okay, every day, more than 3.5 million or 4 million people watch soap opera and follow soap opera every day. And in Portugal, when you look at the 2 main private televisions, they run soap opera from 9:30 p.m. till midnight. Okay? It's a monoculture. But it's a monoculture that follows the trends. Okay? Of course, you have in Portugal some Brazilian soap operas, and they don't follow the Portuguese trends, but they follow the Brazilian trends, definitely. I make here a parenthesis to say that one of the most interesting stories about soap opera in Brazil last year, it's that, and that shows how sometimes fiction looks and finds the real trends that there are in a society before than lots of marketeers. TV Globo, which is the main soap opera production in the world, which is it is the biggest television in Brazil, they were trying to do lots of soap operas since the 70s and the 80s with people from lower classes as main characters. They failed every time, because people didn't want to watch. The rich guys didn't want to watch because they were rich. And the poor guys didn't want to watch because they were ashamed of their lives and they want to be rich. But last year, this changed. And this changed because in Brazil, 30 to 40 million people came out of poverty in 4 or 5 years. It was the first soap opera. It was broadcasted in Portugal at 7 p.m. before dinner time, where homemaids, they were the main characters. First one. And it was a huge hit. Everybody wanted to look at that because the main characters, they lived in the favela, but they went to the rich apartments in Rio, in Leblon and Copacabana and Ipanema, but they were the main characters. And for the first time, it was a huge hit. And it was such a hit that at some time they had the music and the dance, and a few months after, all the rich people in Rio were learning and having lessons in academies to know how to make that dance, okay? And this was definitely a change in a society forever. It's the funk, and the funk that it was the music and the dance from the favelas. Now it's the main hits of in Rio de Janeiro. I know Rio quite well because my girlfriend, she lives in Rio. She's a Portuguese, but she has immigrated she's a publisher, and she lives in Rio de Janeiro. Not because of the crisis, but because she's very independent, and it was very good for her career. And I need to understand that. It's the problem with independent women, but that's okay for me. I hope she will return one day. Back to soap operas. What soap operas shows in Portugal, not this kind of trends that you have in Brazil. It's a completely different society. But if you look with a little of attention this night or tomorrow night to a soap opera for an hour or two, it's not very hard. You will find what? Unemployment, immigration, small business, bankruptcy. You have all that in the soap opera. And if you look at the soap opera with 5 or 10 years, you won't see nothing of that there. And that's why. Because television follows the trends. It's a very competitive world, driven by advertisement and it's a consuming, driving sector. So we always look at that. That's why when you study a society, of course, you cannot live on a bubble. Okay, you live on a bubble, but you need to know that I live on a bubble, my individual bubble, my family bubble, my company bubble, my friend's bubble, but I need to look around sometimes. I don't need to look around sometimes to be like, oh, so negative and depressed, but to be realistic that I live in a society that has changed forever. Some of these changes will stay with us for many years or decades. There will be lots of people that will be out of the game forever, and that's very, very hard to cope with. Okay, but there are other things going out. And the other things that are going out is that there are lots of people exploring these trends, the household, the public space, the network and relations on the public space, even immigration. That is a completely new immigration that we have in Portugal. We had a different immigration on the 70s and the 60s for very real poor people with any kind of instruction that went away to France, to Switzerland, some decades before to Brazil or to Africa. Nowadays it's completely different. It's lots of people that are studying in universities, lots of people that are on architects, lawyers, engineers, scientists, any kind. This is bad, but this is good at the same time, because we'll have the first generation in Portugal for years and years that live and work on a globalized work, that they have friends everywhere. They are Skype and Viber driving since they wake up till they go to bed at night. And all these changes are coming around. And the thing is, to close I passed my time, is that I'm not sure about leadership or creativity or innovation, but the thing that I look with more attention the last years, and I think I will keep my eyes on for the next more years, is that are lots of new things, flourishing around Earth. And these are the most optimistic trends and signals that I see on our society, is that even with all these problems, and they exist, and they will persist, there are people that find that they don't say, okay, we don't have a crisis. No, they say, we have a crisis, okay? But we have a crisis, we have opportunity, we have new things, people will keep talking with each other, having relations with each other, having friends, having families. And on this new world, we have lots of opportunities. And of course, we need to know how to be a leader or to manage with this world. But I think it's a fantastic world that we'll have the next years. Thank you very much.